Hello people, Nico here. Today we will be talking about women training men. This is something that came to my mind by sitting back and quietly listening to nurses talk ill of their husbands, boyfriends and fiancés over the past 2 weeks. The supposed training is something that women do all of the time, and I have personally experienced it. It is something that they do with every man that they're engaged with. You see, every man is a project that requires some feminine input in order to be perfect. Yeah, you guys know it. I'm sure you have all been subjected to it from time to time. So without any further ado, let's get on with the video. So this is when I last heard women talk about training. At work, I try to merge in and say some things that women find funny, and then I just sit back and listen to them talk. I like to observe people and their behaviors, and if they feel like you're one of them, they're a lot more likely to say what they want to say and be quite unfiltered about it. You can't observe lions after all. If you're acting like an antelope, the lions will attack you, so you have to be one of them. Therefore, over the past 2 weeks, I did just that, in order to understand this a little bit better. You see, I had on occasion caught ex-girlfriends of mine try to train me, and I train dogs, I read psychology textbooks, I understand a bit of neuroscience. It wasn't very difficult for me to notice it. But how do other women fare when they come in contact with their guys? All you have to do is just start the conversation along with something like this and pretend to be a hurt puppy. I'm never getting married. It's pointless to do so. I'm having way too much fun on my own. At which point, invariably the question presents itself. Why don't you want to get married? Well, now at this point you can answer, if men are present, the casual reasons of the risks involved for a man if he is to get married, and you pass on the knowledge given the opportunity, and also explain the lack of headaches as an advantage of that, at which point the conversation will result to me dying old and alone, to which I always reply, God, I hope so. But if there are no men around, there is no point to do this. I have no interest in these women and I have nothing to gain, so I will simply throw a topic over and observe their responses, especially of females that are not paying too much attention to what they're saying. So I talk about when I was in a relationship and how I noticed that when things started, she was so attentive towards me, but as the relationship grew in time, she became complacent. And not only that, I noticed that she was trying to train me. Initially, I found it funny because I could see the patterns of reward and punishment, and I think I'm completely untrainable. But my ex told me at the time that women train their men all the time, and I noticed my mom doing the same thing to my dad. Do you guys do the same things to your husbands or your boyfriends? Does he wash or cook for you? What's happening there? And then I just sit back quietly while these females compete with each other on who has the best trained men in their lives. My husband does all the cooking in the house. My husband does all the laundry and dishwashing. We have this rule with my husband that he washes up when I cook and also washes up when he cooks. He's very well trained. My husband does all the ironing in the house. My husband picks the kids from school, cooks dinner and packs them lunch for the next day. And all of these women, all these women are part-time working mothers. The above example includes just 3 women, that's all in total. Which begs the question, for these women, what do they do at home? We all know the answer to that. They go to their part-time jobs making just enough money to supplement the income of the household, and the man works at least full-time. With the household chores that these women have trained their husbands to do, it appears that they're also doing the absolute minimum in the household. I'm also presuming that none of them does any fixing of things around the house or take out the trash or anything like that. So the inevitable question is, what does a man have to gain from this arrangement? I spoke about something deeper and emotional a couple of days back that a man can potentially gain from such a relationship. I will link here at least 2 videos that I have produced regarding love and relationships, and the 2 of those videos are found in the cards and also in the description. You see, I understand that Such feelings may exist, especially for some of us or all of us. Those feelings were once so strong that they kept us captive in relationships. But we have all gone a bit more cynical. We have all grown a bit. We have become slightly more real about things. This is something that can potentially make men unhappy, and Barbarossa has termed it male mother need, the need for female attention and approval. It can be thought of as a need for companionship, and that's something that keeps drawing us back to women. It can be viewed as many things, but the reality is, as I said in a recent video about love, is that love is an illusion that keeps a man captive, and this constant attraction that we have towards women is something that keeps bringing us back, and it's almost like a trap made by our brains in order to keep us captive. So how do these women train these men? I'm going to argue that we could perhaps be slightly more complicated than Pavlov's dogs, and we perhaps would like to think that we are, but in a relationship, since the scale has been balanced so much more favorably for the female, I think we're basically acting like Pavlov's dogs. And that's because men think that they are only worthy of something if they work for it. Therefore, they feel they should continuously perform in all areas so that they can get that vagina. This transfers to the home, where the traditional division of labor was commonly taking place in the past, with the woman taking care of the household. In the household, when a man starts to take more and more responsibility, a woman starts to think less of him, but she still tries and continues with the process. We have spoken about shit tests in the past, and the fact that women instinctively create them not knowing what they're doing or that they are indeed shit tests. And a man can of course go mental if he considers what is a shit test and what it isn't. As such, there is more or less unclear distinction of what a shit test is. Men find themselves to be eventually, following fuckloads of shit tests, to be very well trained. And this training that I talked about commonly occurs in men who don't really pass those shit tests. The shit tests are very simple. I mean, do this, otherwise you don't get sex. Do that, otherwise no sex. The price of pussy, even when it's locked in a contract, it just keeps going up, and men keep falling for the same trap. Therefore, women utilize their sexual market value, the fact that they now have ownership over that man's sexuality, especially when married, where such an agreement is contractual, and during a relationship, of course, where such an agreement is a moral one. Like I said before, men are instinctively more moral than women are. Therefore, a woman, all she has to do is withhold sex until her man gets back in line, and the man usually has no other options. I mean, there are always options, but it's difficult for me to imagine what those options might be, especially if you're married and you're not in a relationship. All my experiences come from relationships and long-term relationships. But that's what the situation is for men, especially men who are willingly entrapping themselves in relationships and marriages. Do these men have any idea that their women think of them as poor and obedient puppies? Do these men feel proud when their plans are constantly changed in accordance to the plans of another person? I mean, I was a young kid once, and I was so optimistic about being an adult because of the financial and actual independence it might bring to me. The actual independence stays only if you care enough about yourself, and you maintain it fighting tooth and nail, especially if you get involved with other people. Other than the type of relationships that I have with women, which I guess many people may not even consider as being relationships, I don't see how you guys can be independent in a real and serious monogamous relationship, especially when you know that despite how a woman may pretend to be, she will still try to train you into a better version of yourself. Even more recently, on a conversation with another female, I told her I did whatever I wanted in my life and nothing else other than my opinion was necessary. And I noticed how this woman started flirting with me. You see, women respond to varying degrees to the amount of bullshit that I say, but once a woman gets a feel of who you are as a person, or knows a bit more about you, or has an understanding of your wage or your potential or whatever, then this woman, she'll start to see you as attractive and as a potential enterprise. This woman said that bad boys, or what she deemed to be bad boys, and I guess she was seeing me as a bad boy, bad boys are indeed better because you see them as projects. You don't want a man who is perfect, which again is of course bullshit, but rather you want a man who you can make perfect. This speaks, of course, to the alpha fucks and beta bucks mentality, and in a conversation that I had with Rollo Tomasian, you can find that link in the description again, you can see how women can utilize this idea. A woman may view a man as an alpha, and may view you as an alpha, but for whatever reason, she will try and change that alpha into someone else who is more beta, someone who will end up staying with her. However, when she manages to change that man, she will change her view about how attractive that man is anymore, and she will no longer be as attracted to him. Since this approach is seen universally with all women, an approach where a woman will always try to make her man more subservient and more trained, and the only women who remain sexually attracted to their man are women of men who don't really take any of their shit tests, who just sit back and do their own thing and allow for the woman to plan her life around them, then we need to understand one thing. The viewpoint that a lot of men have on relationships, the viewpoint which is romantic, is one that will lead them to a sexually unattractive existence, especially towards women. I made this video not simply to address MGTOWs who may still be in the dating scene, but also other younger men who may not have an idea about how women inherently operate. But you need to understand that a woman will spend time with a man, especially time with a man who she finds alpha, and then she will try and make that man as beta as she can. I do not believe in the presence of an alpha and beta dichotomy, especially in the real world, because I have met beta men with their wives who act alpha as fuck in the real world. But the situation is that a man behaves always differently when he's with his woman, and that's because he's a trapped animal in that relationship. So in summary, if you're a young man and you're expecting to enjoy your life in the long run, perhaps you're thinking about engaging in the dating game and in the dating scene and getting some pussy and all that. Expect that a woman, once she gets you in a relationship, she will try and change you. Under no conditions make the mistake of committing to a marriage, of course, because then your ability to give her any sort of fear that your departure may cause her any harm is quite limited. Therefore, understand that women will try and train you into an obedient and cute puppy, a puppy that she will no longer find attractive, and those things that you felt were important for you and sacred, especially in your relationship, attraction, emotional fulfillment, all that stuff, will certainly disappear along with it. And once the frame is shifted to her primary operating mode, then you have forever lost. Once you lose the frame, you can never re-win it. And worse, you might be trapped and forced to stay with this woman who finds you repulsive for the rest of your life, especially if you made the mistake of committing to her. I hope this video helps and serves as a warning to all men, especially young men. Thank you very much for listening.